On the 29th of April, we remembered the teacher of faith, St. Catherine of Siena, a mystic and activist. Her advice was sought on both religious and political matters, and one of her most famous sayings is the wonderful, "Be who God meant you to be, and you will set the world on fire." She also said this: "Proclaim the truth, and do not be silent through fear." I think both these quotations leave us much to reflect on, both personally on an individual level and corporately as the Church. God has created you to be who you are, who has the ability and power to do great things in the world for his glory. And you can do this assuredly because by proclaiming truth rather than remaining silent, we do not need to fear. Today's reading from Acts chapter 7 verse 55 tells of the martyrdom of Stephen, deacon to the early church, and I believe Catherine's wise words speak into this passage and holds a mirror up to us in our current situation today. Stephen's backstory in the preceding chapter tells of how he was chosen by the early church to serve the poor, the widowed and the hungry, to distribute food fairly to those who were starving and in need. He was chosen because he was a man full of faith and the Holy Spirit. He was trustworthy and had a lot of common sense. He was obviously the right person for the job because the scriptures tells us that he did wonderful things and it was obvious how God was working through him. Then things start to go wrong. Some people begin speaking against him, and they set him up by making libelous claims and stirring up the crowd. The echoes of Jesus' own accusers and their lies are clearly seen here. Stephen's response is one of the most remarkable speeches in the New Testament. Before the mob, he gives them a history and theology lesson. He reminds the crowd of their relationship with God way back to the time of Moses. It is a story so far. The positives about the covenantal relationship, but also the turning away from God that's happened. It is when Stephen pointedly speaks words of truth that the crowd find hard to hear that things begin to turn murderous. Stephen accuses their ancestors of killing the prophets who came to speak of the coming Messiah, and that they have too kept up the family tradition. Traitors and murderers, all of you, you had the God's law handed to you by angels, gift-wrapped, and you squandered it, as the Message version of the Bible tells us. Ouch. Stephen is then brutally stoned to death. But in his final moments, he sees the heavens open and the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God. His final words, like Jesus before him, were words of forgiveness to his murderers. Speaking truth to power is not easy. Stephen finds himself before the high priest and the council. In other words, the religious leader and the government, or we perhaps can say before the church and the state. The follower of Christ who is feeding the poor, caring for the marginalised and the needy, finds himself in an untenable position. As he looks up and sees Jesus, the church and state, we are told, covered their ears, and with a loud shout all rushed together against him. It is as if the religious leader and the government could not bear the light of heaven's glory shining down, illuminating Stephen's righteousness and their own unrighteousness and sin. And yet, it is because of Stephen's courage and his sacrifice that God's glory lit up the world, because he acted out of who he was created to be. Those who condemned him were also created lovingly by God. but they did not act out of who God intended them to be. Instead, they had turned away. We are witnessing every day so many sacrifices that people are making, often tragically at a cost to their own lives. And there are many more that we just do not know about when we hear the numbers. Like Stephen, their belief in who they are and what they do, their love and selfless acts of kindness and charity shine the light of truth, reflecting God's glory in the world. And today we give heartfelt thanks for the courage and compassion of those who are sacrificing so much right at this moment in time. So may God protect you and bless you. Amen.